I first did a little bit of boxing in the fall of 1992. I, my first novel had been out for 3 years, but I was really struggling to write a second novel, and I went back to school. I moved to New York and went to Columbia University, and I took this 3-day seminar with the writer Richard Price, and he said a few things to me that were very important. I told him I was struggling to write a second book, and he had talked about how he had struggled to write a second or third book, and he had forced one out, and he realized he should never do that, but he had been under the mindset that good dog when published, bad dog when not published, and so he wanted to be a good dog, but wrote a book just to publish a book, and that's the state of mind I'd been in for 3 years. And he went on in this seminar and then private conversation, I'll mix the two, but he said, I realized that I could only write about something I loved, and that when you write a book, you have to be in love. And then he also said, writers hang out, you know. And after, he must have said that in the class, then I followed him down the street, Broadway after the class, and I said, I totally identify with what you said, good dog, bad dog, and I'm really struggling to write a second book. And he said, are you into cops? And I said, well, sort of. My father had been an auxiliary policeman, and because what had turned around Richard Price's writing career was for like a movie assignment or something, he went and hung out with cops in Jersey City, and he just loved the dialogue and their stories, and this is where he fell in love with this, and he was hanging out, these two principles, be in love and hang out. So he gave me the number of a detective in Jersey City that I could call, whom I could possibly hang out with. And I didn't call the guy, but I was like, all right, I've got to hang out. I've got to find things I'm in love with. And I realized I'd always loved boxing. So I found a gym in Times Square area, back when there were boxing gyms still in Times Square and peep shows. And I started boxing. And then I also realized I had a fascination. I translate the word love as fascination, obsessed by, haunted by, with transsexuals. So I would box at Kingsway Boxing Gym on 40th and 8th Avenue, and then I would walk up 3 blocks to 43rd between 8th and 7th and go to this transsexual bar called Sally's. And I was in these two very different worlds. And eventually I stopped boxing and just was going to Sally's, and then found something else that I was in love with, which was this mad older roommate I had moved in with, and that became all that world of going to Sally's, living with this older gentleman as a roommate, that became the basis for my second novel, The Extra Man. So the first little bit of boxing, 1992. I don't think too much of Times Square. I don't think little of it. It's a spectacle when you go there at night with all the lights, and it certainly is very cleaned up. I was of two minds back when it was much more hardcore. On one hand, I've always been drawn to the gutter, and so I like that whole seedy world. On the other hand, as a New Yorker, I did feel, I think, some embarrassment for the tourists that would come to Times Square and 42nd Street, the center of the city, and it was just, sex and people hawking things, and now I guess it's the same thing, but just very glossy. I don't know, it's not very sexy though, but a lot of hawking. But the lights are spectacular, and so that's a spectacle. The appeal of boxing, I like to test myself, I like to take risks. I think I would like to be free and adventurous, but it's very hard to be free in life. But the boxing ring is this chance to be a hero, or to engage in probably primal aspects of the mind and the body that you wouldn't tap into. And there's a lot of myth and romance, coming through those ropes. It'd be like getting to play center field for the Yankees, So I think for me it's a lot of the metaphors of it, the romance of it, the chance to test myself, to test my courage. At the same time, it hurts a lot. I don't necessarily want to hurt anyone else, though I like the idea, as in any sport, to see how you can score. It's not very good left hook, but I'm limited here with the camera. But so those aspects of it I don't like, and the part of hurting your brain or hurting someone else's brain is not pleasant. My greatest moment in boxing was, and I'm the rankest of rank amateurs, you know, so my great moment is not like I am a wonderful practitioner of, you know, the Queensberry rules. I had two bizarre amateur fights, so I'm no great boxer. But my greatest moment was at the end of my second fight, that I had survived and that I hadn't gotten hurt and that I had won, you know, but yeah, I hadn't humiliated my opponent, but it was just a good match, and just to survive. It's so hard to be in the ring. You get so exhausted, you're so frightened, and I was injured going into it. My jaw was all out of line. I was really concerned that I was going to mess up my jaw, and why am I doing this? I'm a writer. I don't think I had health insurance at the time, you know. What am I doing putting myself at such risk? But so to have survived was glorious, and it was over, and I didn't have to train anymore, and I didn't have this pressure of that I was going to go into a match and maybe be injured. And my girlfriend rose up to the ropes, you know, and we had this kiss after the fight, and it was photographed. But at the moment, it was just very glorious. And when I stepped into the ring, a lot of my fans were there, and I fight as the Herring Wonder. And the cheers I received were really warm. It was almost made me cry, actually. It was kind of like all my years of writing and performing in New York. I got a huge thank you, and this, you know, the sound of the cheers as I entered the ring.